Blackwatch Report, your podcast covering all things Open Division and Contenders, the path to pro for Overwatch League. And here are your hosts, Thorn Rain and Kyle Wynn. And welcome back to another episode of the Blackwatch Report. This is episode 19, The Juice is Loose. I am your host, Thorn Rain, and with me as always, my co-host, Mr. Kyle Wynn. How you doing, Kyle?
Great as always.
Fantastic. As always, we're going to start off kind of what we did the past week and so. I'm going to start us off. I went to what was supposed to be a tournament, but the teams didn't show up. So instead, it was just 6 hours of free play with the 12 or 13 people that showed up at the public library. So we sat around, watched some OWL reruns, played some 6v6 against each other, and then once people started to fall off, we just formed a group and went into quick play and was decimating people. Other than that, I started playing a little bit of Realm Royale with Death Blow and I Play Games from the OWL Recap and Omnic Lab. That game is insanely fun, and if it tells me one thing and one thing only, we can do an Overwatch Battle Royale, because there's classes over there, as long as they do it right. So Blizzard, give me an Overwatch Battle Royale. But other than that, how about you, Kyle? What'd you do?
I watched a ton of E3. I pretty much watched every major conference, the good and the bad. The good being Bethesda, the bad being Square Enix, whatever that was. I bought 2 games at full price because of E3 hype. So I bought Fallout 76 to try to get in that early beta access. And then I bought the Jurassic World Evolution, which I've been playing a bit of. And then they did Quake Champions for free for the week, but if you get it now, then you get it forever. So I've been playing that with my friends too, and found out that I'm kind of really good at that game because it's just pure aim and running and stuff like that. So it's not as much worrying about healing and team dynamics. And so my friends and I have just been wrecking kids on that.
Oh, so if you download it now, it's free forever?
Correct. It's just kind of a starter edition, and still has this whole pay for more heroes. It's kind of like the Heroes of the Storm kind of way to play, but it used to make you pay for it, but now it's just free if you buy it in the next or download it in the next week or so, or just even add it to your Steam account. I think
might have to throw that in my Steam account. That sounds interesting.
Free game that you can play, and it's cool.
Yeah, I love free. I'm cheap. But that's going to take us down into our iTunes reviews, and you'll never guess it. We don't have any iTunes reviews. Come on, people. We need some iTunes reviews. It's not that hard. Even if you go over there and say, you guys suck, at least I know that I'm doing something wrong. So hook us up, swing by iTunes, give us a little review. But we did get some Twitch followers. And with that, we have a very special Twitch follower, and that's Cam Neely 66. That's right, Cam Neely, your follower number 50. Thank you very much for being our 50th follower. That is awesome. Outside of that, we did get 3 more followers, so we're up to 53. I got Anton Grande, Kairos, and Gladly Flaccid. That
what a name.
Twitch names are just as good as Open Division names sometimes, I tell you.
That's true.
But thank you to all of you. It's fantastic. We are one step closer to affiliates, and we appreciate it. We really do. So we're going to roll down into the news. So Kyle, why don't you grab number 1 for us in our new setup in the scene news?
Yes, so we're splitting news in half into 2 different. We got scene news and roster moves, kind of splitting up the way that we're doing news because it's 2 different kind of sections now. The first one is super duper, should not be a surprise to anyone that Simplicity is disbanded. We saw them pull out of both the Beat and the Pit and we assumed that it was something to do with the fact that they lost KSF and then never like replaced him. So then they announced it officially like less than a couple days ago, and then we've seen a lot of the other members of that team go to other teams and filled in there.
Oh yeah, and kind of tying into the simplicity disbanding, Mirage Sport Électronique bought their trial spot. We've seen them, already play 2 matches. We'll get into that a little bit later on, but they were able to secure that spot, and now we get to see what a 5th Open Division team can do up against, former Contenders teams.
And this was the team that we had Aether and Jesus. Jesus, I thought, was the best player on whatever team he was on previously.
Same with Aether.
And then, yes, and so now they are together and hopefully doing better things than on their previous teams.
Definitely.
Moving on to news number 3, we just heard word recently that a bunch of people from X6, the Korean team, are in LA working with the Shanghai Dragons and some boards. Like, I think they're watching games, they're helping, they're studying and coaching, helping to maybe get that up to a 1-40 or a 1-39 instead of a 1-40 or 0-40.
Yeah, it's definitely better late than never. To see that they're trying to change things up, and I mean, X6 is a good enough, organization to come in and try to help them out. So,
how good would it be if Shanghai picked up Godsby? Oh my God, that would be fantastic.
Oh man, just the thoughts of them. Like, could we see X6 become the academy team for Dragons in season 2?
Odd, but so cool.
I mean, it would be nice to see them actually try to develop more talent and not go 0-40.
Mm-hmm.
But that's going to wrap it up for the scene news. All of the rest of the news, it's all roster shuffles, moves, new roster announcements. So Kyle, start us off.
Cool. So Dissme, the support player, is transferred from Meta Athena to BM Hawk. I don't know if this was necessarily due to them wanting to leave, but I know that Meta Athena has been periodically adding people onto their roster. So maybe this was we're going to just ask you to switch teams because it's either that or we drop you. Could be that. I don't know.
Oh, yeah. And I mean, just the last couple of weeks, we've seen Meta Athena doing a lot of moves, a lot. And we've got even more, even after the Dissme. We got Modern, the former tank player for DetoNator.KOREA. He's actually signed on with Meta Athena. So at this point, I think Meta Athena is almost a completely new team. I mean, I don't know if they still have a couple pieces left over, but I mean, it's like 75, 80%
a lot
new. So we'll see what happens there.
Yes, and then we're not even halfway through this roster news section. MVP Space is making a bunch of moves with Attune, Named, and Peterpan joining the team, while TyDolla retiring from competitive Overwatch and has joined Metagaming as a coach, which is very interesting.
Oh yeah, nothing like just switching up. We got news, I believe, late last week that he retired, and then today or yesterday, it was announced that he was signing with Meta Athena to become a coach. So I mean, we've already seen it happen once in Overwatch League, so maybe he'll do a little bit better and feel a little bit better, on the coaching side of things. But moving right along, we got Adora, DPS player, has parted ways with Foxes and moved over to 7. So, again, some more roster shuffles, switching up, in that region. We're gonna see a lot of. I think we're going to see a lot more moves coming out of over there, because it seems like everyone is just completely changing their rosters over in the Korea and the Pacific regions.
Yeah, absolutely. But finally, we have some NA news, is that Rina has left Optic Academy, and they only played one match with the Optic Academy in Contender Season 1, and it was less than, favorable results, to my knowledge. So hopefully they find another team.
Oh yeah. And then we've got, going back over to the Korean side of things, we've got Blossom. They are, kind of bolstering their roster up, and a DPS player, Lip. He's coming out of the Open division. I forget the team that he was on, but again, just more people coming up and getting into the contender scene out of Open division.
Yeah, and then on to the one that most people already know about is the GOATS roster changes. Gator, who was one of the many players on the GOATS team who had an initial ban, I think. It might have just been Gator and Kaluj. But Kaluj had his ban reversed or undone or altered. Gator is still technically banned from Blizzard-sponsored Overwatch tournaments. So he has moved to the coach role, except he played in the pit because he was already in that. First off, it's not a Blizzard-sponsored event, and he was already playing with them in that event before that. But when they are playing in trials, and we've already seen a bit of this because this particular player streamed the matches, which is super interesting to see. We saw XQC filling in, and Nellery, another tank as well, filling in that main tank spot. And then Akawa and Lethal have left the team.
Now, I do want to say something about at least Lethal, because I believe we saw Lethal playing in the pit with him. I'm almost wondering, because I believe that he was formerly Akimbo, and I read somewhere that he may have also gotten a suspension on the Blizzard side of things. So he may still be with the team and just not able to play in the Blizzard official tournaments. But moving along, another big roster shakeup. That's a disband, complete roster overhaul. They added 4 new players. We got Zeal on DPS, Koist on tank, Izzy on support, and then a second support coming in is Rubicon. And they only retained 3 of their previous players, and that is Moz, the DBS player, Barbecue 9130 on their flex tank, and Tri-Spear rounding out their support core. So again, going into trials, whole new roster, trying to get a better outcome than the first season of Contenders over there in EU.
Yeah, and then moving back to a roster we haven't, or I guess a roster we've talked about a moderate amount here on the show is Isurus Gaming, the Argentinian team, I believe, that had the entirety of their team in the World Cup group stages last year. And we also heard that, I thought it was Klaus who left the team and is now listed back on the team.
Yes, we announced, I believe, last week that Klaus had left the team, and he's back.
Yeah, so that, along with Valen, Beast, Ravage, GDX, and Kaizak are all returning back or on this new Isurus Gaming team. Do you remember exactly how far they made it previously on the
I believe they made
South American Contenders?
I believe they made it to the finals. They made it to second. They lost to Brazil Gaming House.
Okay. Yes, the other, the one really good Brazilian team. There's one Argentinian team and one Brazilian team are both phenomenal.
Yeah, and that basically the rivals of each other. And now we see, Isurus Gaming, kind of making a shakeup here, kind of hoping to take that title back away from Brazil Gaming House. But moving right along, with the start of trials, we've got a new starting lineup for Karasuno. We got DPS. No, not the role, the tank. From Simplicity coming in to take over at main tank for Ace of Spades, and then Jur is taking over for the Frog King on the support line for Karasuno, and looks like they might be getting a little bit of success from there. We'll talk about that again a little bit later when we get to our trials section.
Absolutely. And then here with a bunch of popular names on a team with an even more popular name, the Bazooka Puppies have announced their final roster, which includes KSP, Sani, who's back on DPS, not on the Diva role, who can also play a little bit of Pharah really, really well. now it's permanently in that DPS role. Mercy on flex, Mirror on flex, Tonic and Hypnot on tank, Awkward and Insomniac on support.
Oh yeah. I'm not gonna lie, I was a little disappointed when they announced that they were, kind of shutting down operations. This makes me happy that the Bazooka Puppies, one of the greatest Overwatch league or the Overwatch team names to come out of EU, is back in action. But that is going to wrap up the news. So we're going to get into our sponsor here. You can break away from your normal energy and go rogue. Go to therogueenergy.com and use promo code Blackwatch Report at checkout for 10% off of your purchase. New flavor, blue raspberry, and a new shaker, gold. It is nice. They just announced that the trial pack, which you get a shaker, and 4 packs of the flavors. You get 1 of each flavor. I believe it is $15.99. You can't beat it. The shaker's $10 in itself, and you get to try all of the flavors and see which one you like. Just remember, Blackwatch Report at checkout for 10% off. And with that, we're going to go down into the quick play. With how
we're putting the quick play this time as well.
We are. With the amount of matches that we had for the Overwatch PIT, we're going to go through some of these fairly quick. And by fairly quick, you're just getting a score. So up in the upper bracket, we see Goats lose to NRG 3-2. Down in the lower bracket, we have Grizzlies just getting decimated by the Goats 3-0. Fusion University beat their rival, we could say that, Envision 3-1. And then back down in the losers bracket, Fusion University loses to the Goats 3-0. Wow, you got a little bit of info on this one.
So one of the most interesting things about this is the player from their Hometown Heroes tournament event thing, Rowan, who we heard from Elk say that he streamed with them a block here and a block there, but overall didn't play a ton. Well, he played now against probably their biggest competition thus far. And that was, apparently we found out later, that's because Kraken Lacken just overslept. I assume his Discord was exploding, ringing off the hook. People were texting him and calling him. But, if you're deep in the world of sleep, Overwatch comes second, I guess.
Yes.
But then we also heard weird news that apparently Beast Halo disconnected, but instead of pausing and waiting, they just had, I don't know what the deal was with, I didn't watch the entire match, but apparently there was some weird issue of Rowan playing main tank at some point for some reason.
Yeah, the way that it kind of played out is right at the end of, I want to say it was Temple of Anubis. There was a disconnect. So Rowan comes back in and then just continues to play, and there was a pause for a little bit of time. But then it was like, okay, he's not coming back. Maybe something's wrong. They threw Rowan in. We see a little bit of a difference here between Contenders and the PIT, because I'm pretty sure you're not allowed to do that in Contenders. You can't sub out people mid-match, but they were able to sub out Beast Halo for Rowan in this event. So they didn't fully get, kind of screwed over there. It didn't really help, because they were right in the middle of a push when it happened, and they ended up losing the push after the change, which could be expected. But yeah, it was interesting. I was glad to see him get to play, after winning the Hometown Hero. It was nice to see him on stream.
Just an unfortunate circumstance that they were getting rolled by the team that they had a possibility of beating, all that kind of stuff.
Yep. So going back up to the upper bracket finals, we have last night's leftovers going up against NRG, and it was a close one. We have NRG squeaking it out against the leftovers 3-2. So we go down to the losers bracket finals, where we see Goats versus last night's leftovers, and it was a brawl. Goats take it 3-2. So Kyle, what do you have, sir?
So, give me 2 seconds. And we are seeing we started off on Ilios, as we do most of these. We either start on Ilios or Lijiang Tower, I believe.
Yep.
So here we see kind of LNL already starting strong. We see Track on Pharah, who is completely uncontested, getting tons and tons and tons and tons of kills. And the GOAT's strategy for this is kind of ignore the Pharah, which works sometimes, but very often doesn't, especially in this case. And the other thing is that Sugar Free's Dragon Blades are just always really, really good. He's one of the few players who can get like consistently valuable Dragon Blades. Very rarely does he ever get like nothing with one. On the other side, we saw Goats have a lot of good pulse bomb kills on the back of Sit, but unfortunately that was only good enough to get them ruins, whereas LNL took both Well and Lighthouse, giving them the 1-0 in this match to start. Then moving on to Eichenwald, we saw two 3K tires from Sugar Free. I think in three fights, because he got the 3K tire, had another fight to build it, then got another 3K tire to be able to defend on third.
It was insane.
But then on the other side, I think this was after both recapped. I think this was second. Actually, maybe not. I don't have the score down. Oh no, it wasn't, because they held. I think they got held, and then on the L&L attack, we saw Sugar Free had a blade, and Wavy, instead of immediately hitting the graviton, he waited a second, waited until he noticed that the dash came out, the cooldown was on, and so Sugar Free couldn't move anywhere and was in his final position along with a couple other people on the team. They gravitoned him, wiped him out, and then got the win on Eichenwald. Moving on to Anubis, where we saw Gator have this very interesting idea of most of I think the other 5 members of the team were like capping out, with a couple of them started to like push from A to B after they won on A. Then Gator was already on second point before they even got the second tick finished, but they knew that they had that point won. And then he got a kill onto Sugar Free, and then they just kind of snowballed by themselves entirely. Then on second attack for the Goats, they lost 4 members, and Sit and Wavy were on their own and capped it out on their own and got like 3 more kills, and then capped the point by themselves. On the side of LNL, Goats was running a double sniper defense, which is really high damage, high pick potential, but it also has no point pressure. So what does LNL do? It was a good call to do this, is to run literally straight to the point, Lucio speed boost, run in, and then they can cap it pretty quickly, because not only does it not give us easy sightlines because they're literally right underneath the snipers, but it also means that you don't have anything to contest you, and so you can let them come into you, and if you're the attacker on the point, generally you have a little bit more tank and healing than if you have like a Lucio and a Hanzo, or a Widow and a Hanzo jumping on top of you.
Oh yeah, and in this instance on the LNL attack, we saw Sugar Free on his Genji just go absolutely ham with his dash resets. He gets a quad kill with nothing but dash resets and shurikens, which ended up being what pushed them into taking the point. He got the 4K on his own, basically, and then they wiped the last 2 members of Goats, getting the team kill indicator to go off, taking the point. But I do have something here about Kaluj. This dude is insane. Just constant value with Diva bombs. 0 fear when doing a chase down. He got a set of hero kills, and this is on their defense. Where, like, I'm calling them hero kills because he was the hero here. Like, he won this out for them at this point. he gets a 3K with his diva just directly flying into people. I want to say he took out Trek on Farah. He took out oh man, I didn't write the names down. I know he got Trek. He came around. He got their Mercy, and I want to say he got their Monkey. But it was all him. It was literally dive into him, rocket, little miniguns, takes out the 3, and then is able to stagger them enough that LNL isn't able to get back to the point efficiently. Because it was an all-out brawl at this point, but he flew around the outside, just picking off one at a time. So well done, sir. Well done.
Yeah. Moving on to the next map, which was Route 66, we saw off the bat, out of the gate, Goats are on attack. LNL were in the lower tunnel in the side of the mountain, sprinted out, attacked, did basically the Goats defense where you just like hold them at their spawn door, and did it for like 3 minutes up until like 30 seconds left. Yep. And then made the Goats push in overtime into second. So that also gave DCOD a ton of ult charge, and he had a ton of phenomenal shatters. And then on their attack, DCOD on the Winston was primal raging and got literally the entirety of the Goats team completely distracted, while the rest of his team were just like pushing the payload. He kept, I think it was like 4 or 5 members on him, trying to kill him, distracted far away from the point. And they just kept pushing the payload. So that was part of the reason LNL were able to take that win and push it back to a 2-2, moving us into Lijiang Tower.
Now, I do have one quick thing about DCOD there. There's a moment where DCOD got into the little truck stop area, like after the second point, and he hung out, and he was back there by himself, and then everybody engages down by the payload, and he comes up from behind, and I believe who's Goat's Zenyatta player? Tenses the Mercy. It's
don't remember who it was.
I can't remember his name.
He's the person who's not supposed to be on the team anymore, but still on the team, I think.
Lethal. Yes. Yeah.
Lethal, yes.
He comes up from behind Lethal on Winston and 1v1s him and takes him out before anybody else knows that there's a monkey standing in the back line. It was the craziest like ninja monkey play I've ever seen in Overwatch. It was phenomenal. Like awesome.
Yeah. DCOD definitely had a really phenomenal Route 66, both on Reinhardt defense and on Winston attack.
Yes.
He was just absolutely incredible. But on our last map, and this is where it like everything kind of falls back into place, we saw something interesting. So previously, like the last, I think 2 or 3 weeks, we've seen LNL play. You've heard criticism from me on them that they were doing this weird 3 DPS with Enlar, Sugar Free, and Brack, I think it was, all playing DPS on Lijiang Tower, and then Sugar Free had to go to Diva, which, if you're going to have anyone swap off DPS, it probably shouldn't be Sugar Free, who's like probably one of your best players. And it just obviously doesn't work as well when you have a non-Diva player on Diva. But here they brought in Nex to fill that third DPS role and played a little bit of DPS before eventually switching to Diva and Brigitte when necessary, which I thought was a really smart plan for the side of LNL. Yeah. But that was not really anything to contest with the fact that I just put back to old form, where it just looked like Goats kind of were home and figured out like Lijiang is one of their better maps, and they kind of just know what to do, and so they got 200 to 0, 100 on each point, just straight roll through the end of Lijiang Tower, giving them the spot in the Grand Finals.
So moving into the Grand Finals, we see Goats going up against NRG, and NRG takes this. And when I say takes this, I mean they ripped it from the dying hands of the Goats. They take it 3-0. Now in that 3-0, we do see a draw. So 3-1 or 4-1, 4-0, like extra innings. But Kyle, what you got?
So this was an odd. So I had to look this up to make sure I was correct. This is the complete reversal of what happened in the PIT Invitational, where Goats took it 3-0 over NRG. Now NRG's like, all right, it's our turn, and it's starting at Lijiang Tower, where I literally just like a minute ago said how this is Goats' best map. Well, NRG wrecked them. Stratus is a really, really, really good Pharah, and what is Poise is an absolutely phenomenal Widow. Long gone are the days of Poise not fitting in with his team properly and being out of sync. Now he is ingrained into the team, fits perfectly, knows exactly where to be, and the team knows how to play around him and give him as much to work with as possible. And the Widow Pharah just completely wrecked the Goats comp.
Oh yeah. It is nice to see Poise, actually fitting in with the team, because in Contenders, after they lost, Damon. After they lost Damon and they picked up Poise, you could see that the team played. They weren't as confident in their play, but now they kind of got that back. But I want to talk about Stratus here. Stratus got, at the very start of Garden, 2 insanely quick barrages. In the first team fight, he had a barrage, and that's what won them the point. And then by the time Goats got back, he was already back up to his second barrage for the beginning of team fight number 2, and proceeded to get, I believe it was a 2 kill with the barrage, and then he took 1 person out, just solo shotting. Stratus is insane on Pharah. And when it comes to the Goats comp, Pharah is kind of like I would say the biggest, the counter, because they have no range. They have to switch. Well, when they switch, sometimes they don't play as clean as they do when they're playing the 303. And I mean, we saw it in this series a couple times where NRG would just run back to spawn and switch because they knew that they could counter whatever NRG was playing. So I think the 303 GOAT comp is kind of getting a little bit figured out. It's not going to be as dominant as we've seen it, but it'll still be fun to watch, that's for sure.
Yeah, and as you kind of mentioned, they definitely, the Goats didn't really have a great counter to this Widow pick, and they kind of just tried to ignore the Pharah and the Widow, which is kind of a not good thing to do, only when the Pharah is as strong as Stratus is. Obviously, at certain times, you can kind of just like run to point and make the Pharah come into you, and at that point, then you can throw the D.Va and the Zarya in the face of the Pharah and usually either keep her back or take her down. But here, Stratus just got way too much value out of it, and that's what gave NRG the win there. Moving on to Numbani, it was a lot closer. And part of this was because Goat started off really hot. They had the first attack. They ran, interestingly, Lucio Mercy, where they ran Tensa on the Mercy, and then the other player, Lethal, on Lucio, which is super interesting. That's like OG beta Overwatch strats. But it worked pretty well for them, and they ended up getting a 4-minute time bank. But then on the other side, on their defense, they were really, really good at drawing out time, despite the fact that there was some phenomenal play on the back of a very interesting comp from NRG, which was the Zen Ana on attack, Halt Hook plus double sniper. So it's like 3 different sub comps like combined together to make whatever that Power Rangers combination robot thing is.
Oh yeah. And speaking of having an Ana out on the field, we saw a little bit of kind of elk play here. Robdab was going nuts with those biotic grenades. He was getting so much value out of those grenades when the 303 comp was rushing in. He'd get 3 or 4 people, and then all of them would just get melted. But there's one specific thing I want to talk about here. Rob hits a sleep darts on Kaluja's baby diva as everything is getting wrapped up. They kill everybody, and baby diva just gets dropped right in front of the payload. So what does Stratus do? He puts a concussion rocket right off to her, it would be like her left side, which pushes her further away from the road to get back to her team. And it was just like, yep, we're going to stagger you out for as long as we can, because we're going to make you run back to the front of the bus, and then we're going to kill you. It was one of those just absolutely mean plays that we see happen to baby divas all the time. But this was probably one of the meanest that I've ever seen.
Yeah, and then one of the most phenomenal plays that really opened this up for NRG was Poise on the Widowmaker. And this was like a weird, like, okay, well, now Tensa's dead, because I think it was just Tensa being out of position, got headshot by Poise on the Widowmaker. And that's no res, because Tensa was on the Mercy. So your Mercy's down, no res, you're down 1, good luck. And then Poise comes, gets the Tracer, gets the Hanzo. Like, okay, well, it's now a 6 versus 3 because Poise doesn't miss. Now we have the first point. Cool, let's move on. They push all the way to the end, but have like no time left because, as I mentioned before, goats were just like sucking time away from this, just trying to always be on the payload, always winning fights. So then it goes into extra rounds, and then it's technically extra rounds, but it's also just goats had like 4 minutes to cap 1 tick on A, or it was a draw. Well, we mentioned previously that NRG won this 3-0, so what does logic dictate? Well, NRG held the goats for 4 minutes on Numbani A, which is not incredibly easy to do.
Especially against the goats, who always push huge time banks out of Numbani.
And just run into you. But luckily they were able to get a lot of really good starting picks. And then dragged the whole map out to a draw, which was the best that they could have done. And then moving on to the tiebreaker, which is literally just like a 4th map or a 3rd map, considering that Numbani was essentially just a ignore. And here we saw Stratus again, phenomenal Pharah moments. Ran Gator on the Hog, which is interesting. It's definitely not a new strategy that we've seen. But I don't think it necessarily worked out for them incredibly well, because Gator didn't get a lot of phenomenal picks because Stratos was incredibly far away and Poise wasn't giving anything to work with either. So NRG take that. Moving on into the final map, Hanamura, in which the goats are able to cap A, barely, almost got full held from NRG because Stratus on Hanzo was destroying them.
Oh, yeah. And something I noticed about their point A defense, when it comes to the GOATS comp, they move as one. The whole team of 6 moves as one. They zone into one specific person, and they just absolutely destroy that person. Well, if you go back and you watch the Hanamura attack for GOATS, you'll notice that NRG have kind of a strange defense. They're not on the point like some teams play. They're not in the choke like some teams play. They were literally like half mooned around the point, with Stratus being up on the high ground. So anywhere that they went to try to get somebody, Stratus had line of sight on them. They literally played the goats into their own weakness when it comes to that, because the goats they stopped going after people and just going straight to the point. Well, when they would go to the point, they were now surrounded at all 3 entrances by NRG, who would just come in and just close in on them and suffocate them. So it was a really awesome defense to watch. But I've never seen a defense ran like that on Hanamura that I know of. Not the way that NRG did it.
Yeah, it's definitely an NRG specific thing, where they also end up running Phosix on the Ana and Rob on the Zen, which is a really it's done by teams, but not done as consistently by teams as we've seen NRG do it. And they do it incredibly well. They basically full held goats without a tick even, I think.
Yep, nothing.
Until Kaluj gets a 2K Diva Bomb, which is basically the tipping point. They would have probably definitely lost and gotten full held had Kaluj not gotten this. And instead they just lost after goats were able to take A, push to B, not get a tick, because they lost all of their extra time bank because they almost got full held. They only had like 3 minutes, 3.5, 4 minutes to cap out B. They couldn't do it because they definitely didn't have the snowball potential, because you basically need to win A on either one prolonged first fight or on your second fight to have the ult build up to be able to take B in like that really strong snowball fashion that we see Dallas do all of the time on their attack. On the side of NRG, we saw their attack take definitely not as much time. They had like a 4 or 5 minute time bank going into B, but one of the annoying things to see was that Kha'Zix kept getting picked by Kalujah's Diva Bombs. There was at least 2, I think maybe 3 different times where everyone else lived except Kha'Zix ended up getting picked on the Mercy. It's definitely something you need to watch out for. You have the mobility to get out of most sticky situations, but I think also possibly could have been the fact that his team didn't play around it as much. Maybe they didn't give him good places to fly to. Regardless, that should not be happening. And then what it took for NRG to be able to cap this point and get the win was Poise going McCree and clicking heads, and then they won because Poise is a pretty good McCree. A good Widow makes generally for a pretty good McCree as well.
Oh yeah, definitely. Watching Poise on that McCree, it was insane how quick he got his Deadeye. And his, I think he only used Flashbang twice, and both times he got super value out of it. He flashbanged Kaluj coming out of a Diva mech and then popped her head. And then the, I want to say it was Gator switched over to Winston at some point and popped Primal Rage and threw him into a corner. Throws out the flashbang, flashes him right as he's going into the Primal Rage, puts, I think, 2 in his body, 1 in his head, and Gator's got to jump out because he was about to get wrecked. And then literally right after that, they win the point. So, Poise just popping off on McCree was fun to watch, definitely.
Absolutely. And that was basically what gave NRG this final win, taking their 3-0 revenge over the Goats, winning the PIT championship. And then next we're going to talk about the other. Obviously, it wasn't as easy to watch because they don't stream these games. But you know who does stream a lot is XQC, who was filling in for Gator for these matches. So I was able to watch the Karasuno game that the Goats played, but I did not watch the Grizzlies game.
Yeah.
But do you want to take through the match results, and I will go through the standing.
Sure thing. So on June 9th, we had Goats versus Karasuno, and Karasuno in their new look starting lineup against the Goats' new look starting lineup. Take this. Karasuno win 3-2. We have second wind going up against the Grizzlies, and second wind taking the win there. 3-2 over the Grizzlies. Eminent Esports goes up against Mirage Sport Électronique, the team that bought Simplicity's spot, and Mirage takes this 3-1. And then we see relegation matchup. We've got last night's leftovers versus bye week, and last night's leftovers take this 3-1. Down on June 10th, we've got the Goats going up against the Grizzlies, and the Grizzlies take this 3-2. We're kind of seeing a little bit of a pattern here. Goats play a little bit better with their actual main tank. Playing with the sub main tank, they're not looking as strong. Hopefully we can see a little bit more cohesive play out of them in the next set of matches in Trials. But the next matchup, we've got Karasuno going up against Mirage Sport, and Karasuno take this 3-1. Then we've got last night's leftovers squaring off against Second Wind, and they take this also 3-1. And then we have Eminent going up against Bye Week, and as we've seen, Bye Week is starting to get some wins. Bye Week take this 3-2. So what are the standings looking like, Kyle?
So in our top four, which is at the end of these 3 weeks, the top four are those who move on and get to face off the mostly all Academy teams in Contenders Season 4 now, I think.
Well,
right?
It's technically, I
3.
I believe the way that they're doing it is it'll be Season 2, 2018.
That's what it is.
They're going to break them up per year. So we'll always have 3 seasons per year. It's weird.
Right. Okay. So in Season 2, we're now in the second season because the whole bit with FNRGFE, that's all just never happened. But back to the real Season 2, the new Season 2, LNL is up 2-0, first spot. Karasuno 2-0, second spot. They just have a slightly worse map differential at +2 instead of LNL's +4. Mirage is dead even with a 4-4 map percentage at 1-1 in matches. So is Grizzly, so they're technically tied. Bye Week and Second Wind are also tied, but are on the negative end of the spectrum because they are at -2 map wins. Goats is at 0-2 match wins, 4-4 maps. So it means they're equal to 0. And then I think that number's wrong, but whatever, because I think that Goats won 4 and then lost 6. I don't know why that's like that. Maybe I just copied that when Wikipedia hadn't updated yet. But then lastly, in the very, very bottom spot is Eminent. But I did also want to run through the week 2 matches coming up in 2 days. So if today's Wednesday, this is on Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. We're seeing Goats and Mirage, Grizzlies and LNL, Karasuno and Bye Week, Second Wind versus Eminent. On the 16th, it's Goats versus LNL, Mirage versus Bye Week, Grizzlies versus Eminent, Karasuno versus Second Wind. Finally, on Sunday, Goats Bye Week, LNL versus Eminent, Mirage versus Second Wind, and Grizzlies versus Karasuno. So depending, I think this will be the really interesting one. Is I really want to see how Goats match up against Mirage, who I think are a pretty good potential team just based off of name power. But the Goats are really starting out kind of low based on the fact they have to play with a new main tank. So maybe they can kind of work out the issues and kind of get the steam going because they don't have incredibly difficult matches ahead of them. The LNL one is probably going to be a bit difficult, but I think Bye Week is relatively easy, and then Mirage might be a relatively even match, probably favoring Goats if they figure this stuff out.
Yeah, I would definitely agree. But that is going to wrap us up. We don't have a main discussion this week because there was a ton of news and matches and then trials. No speculation station and no community intel. But we do have this. Come follow us on Twitch. I got there. We need iTunes reviews also. So if you're watching the show live, if you're listening to the show on the podcast, swing by iTunes, drop us a review. It helps. 1 star, 5 star, it doesn't matter. We'll read it on the show. We'll give you a shout out. Same if you follow on Twitch. Swing by the YouTube, hit the subscribe button. We don't have a cool link. We got like 15 subscribers, so we're like way off on that one. But if you just search Blackwatch Report, we'll come up. But other than that, Kyle, where can they find you?
You can find me on YouTube, or not YouTube, no, on Twitter and Twitch at Kyle the Winner, winner spelled Wynner.
Fantastic. And you can find me over on Twitter at Thornrain. You can find me on Twitch at Thornrain, but I do most of my streaming over at the Blackwatch Report Twitch right now. You can find the show on Twitter at Blackwatch Report, no O in report. You can email the show, blackwatchreport@gmail.com. We will read your emails live on the show. Follow the show on Twitch, twitch.tv/Blackwatch Report. We record live Wednesday, 6 p.m. Eastern. Our intro music is the main theme song for Overwatch, covered by our very own Kyle Wynn. This has been a High Noon production. You can find all of our shows at highnoonpodcast.com, and you can come and chat with all of the hosts over at the Discord at discord.me/highnoonpodcast. And with that, Blackwatch out.